You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you on January 26th. It's been a crazy day today as far as it being the one-year anniversary of the unfortunate passing of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna and 7 others in that helicopter crash. So just want to say, prayers out to all them's families, and just it's been a hard day for a lot of sports fans around the world. But we're going to try to make this brighten your day up a little bit and come to you with some baseball news. But before we jump into that, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing all right, doing all right. And you had that's tough, and we've had a tough week too, losing Hank Aaron,
Oh, yeah.
the legendary Atlanta Braves home run hitter, Milwaukee Braves / Atlanta Braves home run hitter, and great guy, great ambassador for the game. We have such a long episode today. I could talk for an hour about Hank Aaron, but just wanted to briefly mention it for a minute. 755 home runs. Um, by many people, still the all-time home run king because of the controversy surrounding Barry Bonds. And when he broke the home run record back in the 70s with hit 715, um, that was one of the defining moments of not only the Braves franchise and baseball, but the city of Atlanta and the entire country. I mean, that was a moment that you know everyone came together to see that, was cheering for him, and what a great ambassador for the game, a great guy. And we've heard him talk a lot on broadcasts and stuff the last several years. I'm a little too young to have remembered him playing, but um, I wasn't around then. But just really really sad to see that. It's very tough. Still the all-time leader in RBIs in Major League Baseball history. So just an absolute legend of the game that we lost this week.
Yeah, it's a big loss for the game of baseball. We've this year 2021 hasn't started very great for the legends as well, and
Yeah, Don
like,
Sutton and Hank
yeah,
Aaron and
Tommy Lasorda. And I mean, like you said, you have so many people that you can go on for an hour on this episode alone about Hank Aaron, which we might come back to that in another episode at a future time, just because we've had so many moves happen this week that we just don't have the sheer time to dive into Hank Aaron the way he deserves.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so that will be something we circle back to. I will make a note so we can do that. Um, but just jumping in so we can hammer through all this stuff and not take too much time. But the Blue Jays, they decided to just do all their free agency in 1 week. They have signed Kirby Yates to a 1 year, $5.5 million deal. They signed George Springer, which we alluded to, at the end of last episode. They signed him to a 6 year, $150 million deal. And then just today, they ended up signing Marcus Semien to a 1 year, $18 million deal. And the plan is to move Semien to second base and move Kevin Biggio over to third base.
Yeah, these are some crazy moves here. George Springer was probably, he arguably the biggest hitter out of this class, free agency. Um, you know, you could argue Realmuto is the most important position player, and Springer honestly has a case for the biggest free agent signing. I think Trevor Bauer probably is number one, but Springer is a really really good player. He's a 3-time All-Star, a 2-time Silver Slugger, the 2017 World Series MVP. He's only 31 years old. He's a career 270, 361, 491 hitter with a 134 WRC plus and 26.6 wins above replacement. So this is a really good player. 2019 was his best career season. He hit 292 with a 383 on base and a 591 slugging, hit 39 home runs, put up 6.5 wins above replacement, which is a phenomenal number. Almost MVP level numbers there. And then this past year, he wasn't quite as good, but he was still pretty good. He had a slow start, but ended up with a 265 average, 359 on base, 540 slugging, put up almost 2 wins above replacement in the shortened 60 game season. So Springer, definitely the headliner, one of the headliners of this free agent class, and I think he's going to do very well, in Toronto, for at least for the first few years, depending on his health and aging, how he ages at 31 years old. They brought in Kirby Yates, who, 2019 All Star. His last full season, he was phenomenal. 119 ERA and a 3.4 wins above replacement season for a reliever. Incredible. His career, 3.54 ERA, 3.39 FIP, with over 12 and a half strikeouts per nine and just 3 walks per nine in his career. Very good. He had an elbow surgery that kept him out of most of the season last year, but it wasn't Tommy John. I think you said bone spurs, right?
Yeah, he had some bone spurs in his pitching elbow.
Yeah, so 33 years old. Depending on his health, now those bone spurs could be something that lasts and stuff. But 1 year, $5.5 million deal. It's pretty cheap. And Springer, obviously, I forgot to mention his 6 year, $150 million deal for Springer, which seems about right for him. And then Semien, who had an absolutely superb 2019 season in Oakland. He's a career 270 hitter with a 361 own base and 491 slugging, so very solid. Oh, that was Springer's line. Semien's line, a career 254 hitter, 322 on base, 425 slugging, which is still an above average hitter. Almost 19 wins above replacement. But 2019, 285, 369, 522 with a 140 WRC plus and a 7.6 wins above replacement season that put him third place in MVP voting. That was his age 28 season, which was superb. This past year, he wasn't quite as good. He kind of came along a little bit at the end of the season. Dealt with some injuries last year, kind of nagging injuries, not necessarily things that kept him out for the whole season or anything. But he signed a 1 year, $18 million deal. So there's going to be owed a pretty good bit of money this year. But if he doesn't recapture his form, it's not a super risky contract because he'll be able to walk after that. So. Um, it's a very solid week for the Blue Jays for sure.
Yeah, Kirby Yates. I mean, I just want to hit on each of these guys a little bit.
Yeah,
Kirby
go ahead.
Yates when he got traded to the Padres, that's really when his career turned around. You look at his years before that, he had a 7.97 ERA, a 5.23. The year he was traded, he had a 3.97, and then 2018, 2019, when he became or when his first full seasons with the Padres, he had a 2.14 ERA and then a 1.19 or a 1.19 um, ERA. So, he turned into one of the game's best relievers after that trade. So, started using the splitter a little bit more. So it's a big deal for the Blue Jays who desperately needed a back end of the bullpen type guy. And if Kirby Yates can be anything like he was 2018, 2019, that's going to be a huge, huge pickup for, only $5.5 million for the Blue Jays. Um, Semien, like you said, he had his career year in 2019. He started his career with the White Sox, and they weren't sure he was going to stick at shortstop. And then once he got to the Athletics, he turned into a very, very good defensive shortstop. That was one of the things that the White Sox were very afraid of, is that he wasn't going to be a very good defender. And then you look
Yeah,
at 2018, he had a 15.6, 15.6 grade at shortstop, and then 14.1. This year was a 4.4, so very well on track for that same amount. As you said, he struggled this year, but in the playoffs, he was really, really good. I don't have his exact playoff stat line up, but I do remember a point where he went like 7 straight at bats or something with either getting a hit or a walk or something in the playoffs. So he started heating
yeah,
up a little bit towards that time.
yeah. On your point on Simeon, with his defense, he really has turned into one of the best defenders. He was a Gold Glove finalist in 2019. But I think it's crazy. Back when he first got traded to Oakland, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he led the American League in errors like his first
Yeah,
year there or something. Like he really has worked extremely hard on his game and improved on his consistency playing shortstop too. Just something to add. There's definitely a good amount of makeup there and work ethic for him. So that's
no,
something that's pretty
yeah.
impressive.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. When he came over in 2015, he led the American League, or it might even been the
Might have
Major
been the
League,
majors, yeah.
in airs, and now he's turned into a Gold Glove finalist and an MVP candidate, in 2019. So, 2020 was supposed to be a big year for him, but like you said, he battled some nagging injuries and he started off slow. And with it only being a short season, you don't get a full view of what a player really is. As far as Springer goes, he might be one of the most undervalued parts of that Astros dynasty run that they had. He pretty much he's a better player when you put him in that leadoff role and let him just do his thing. Um, and he once he was setting the tone for that lineup in Houston, they were a different lineup, really. I mean, at times he would carry this entire team on his back, especially like if you saw the 2017 World Series. He did a lot of that work. Um, his defense is starting to dip, which we talked about. He might not stick in center field, um, but as a hitter, I mean, to go into that lineup with where we're talking about young guys like Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Lourdes Gurriel, Vlad Jr., Teoscar Hernandez, even somewhat. And if they just put him at the top of that lineup and he helps settle, them all down and set a tone for that lineup, you know, that's going to be very, very scary. That Toronto team was already a really good team, kind of as we thought, up and coming. Adding a player like George Springer and now Marcus Semien even into that lineup, if Semien can return to his 2019 form, that's going to be a very, very formidable team this next season.
Yeah, I think they're going to be very good as well. And one thing to add on Springer, I think when it comes to his overall game you know in Houston, I think he was their best, most consistent position player for their entire run of going to the World Series and everything. Because there's guys. I mean, Correa was good, but he wasn't always good. And Bregman obviously came on the last couple of years, but he wasn't there the whole time. And Springer's kind of been that consistent guy for them, and that's gonna hurt the Astros losing that consistent piece that has been there for the entire time.
Absolutely, they're going to need
Him or Altuve being there. Altuve, you can't forget about him, but
yeah, they're going to need Kyle Tucker to really step up big. Which we'll
absolutely.
talk a little bit more about the Astros in this episode because they did make a move this week as well.
Yeah.
But let's hit on one of the smaller signings this week. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but catcher Austin Romine signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal with the Cubs. We were looking before the show started. He's not that great of a player. I mean, his career slash line is a 239 batting average, 278 on base, a 361 slugging percentage. He's a for his career, he's a .2 WAR guy, so he's right around league average. Replacement level, we should say. Um, he's going to be a backup catcher most likely for this team. Not anything that's going to be too special for them. And he one thing he did cite was that his enthusiasm to go play for David Ross.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't even think about that because this guy's kind of similar-ish to David Ross. He's a but definite backup catcher, could be a clubhouse leader. He's been in the big leagues a long time. I mean, there's not too much to say about his play. I mean, he's a veteran defensive-minded catcher that he'll slot into the backup catcher role that Victor Caratini was in before they traded him. Just a 239 hitter, 278 on base, 361 slugging for his career, backup catcher, and that's absolutely fine, for that price. So um, we'll move on now to the next signing. That's a little bit bigger, maybe not the biggest one we had this week, but it's a pretty good one. A guy who at one time was one of the hottest pitchers in baseball, and Jose Quintana. Um, he signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Angels. He's a 32-year-old, 2016 All-Star. He has a 3.73 career ERA, a 28.3 career wins above replacement. He actually put up 4+ wins above replacement 4 straight seasons, which is considered All-Star level. 4 straight seasons. So he only had that one All-Star appearance, but he was really an All-Star level pitcher much longer than that, mostly on some bad White Sox teams. But the last 4 seasons, a 4+ ERA, with this past season dealt with injuries and only pitched 10 innings. So um, this is an interesting signing, and I like it for the Angels. This is a pretty good buy low type player.
Yeah, absolutely. Jose Quintana was always going to have to live up to a big, big task because he was a part of that Eloy Jimenez trade from the White Sox to the Cubs. So he was always going to be expected to, play much much higher level than what people would think because Eloy was such a stud prospect. And I think even Dylan Cease was in that deal as well, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Yes,
right?
it was Eloy and Dylan Cease for
Yeah.
Jose
So
Quintana, and
so
I think there was another guy. I think there maybe a reliever came with him too or something, but still.
maybe. But he was always he's always going to have to live up to that hype for the Cubs. And he was decent, but he was never even what he was with the White Sox, really. But for the Angels, we've talked much about them needing a pitcher that can really go out and take the ball every fifth day and not worry about injuries. You have Andrew Heaney, you have Griffin Canning, you have Shohei Ohtani, you have guys that like that who are decent and they can be good major leaguers, but they just are inconsistent with injuries or inconsistent, within their development so far. And Quintana before this season, I mean, you look 32 starts, 30 or 31 starts, 32, 32, 32, 32. Like he's just consistent about taking the ball basically every fifth day, going out there and doing, a major league average around a 4 ERA. I mean, that's going to be big for this team. And if, he can help bump them up a little bit, get, lower that ERA a little bit down, he's maybe pitching in more pitcher friendly ballparks and, against a couple worse teams and the Mariners and the Rangers a little bit more often. It could be a solid signing for the Angels, and maybe they can use him as to go get another starting pitcher and use him as a 2 to 3 guy instead of a 1 to 2 guy. So
Yeah, I think it's a solid move here. I mean, they're basically replacing Julio Teheran with Jose Quintana, and I don't think there's too many people that would complain too
turn
much
that
about that
down.
there in
Yeah,
LA. Yeah. So one more pitcher that signed the exact same deal as Jose Quintana, but this pitcher signed with the Twins. It's actually a 38-year-old J.A. Happ who has been with the Yankees last couple years, with the Blue Jays for a while. Um, He's I think I had underappreciated what J.A. Happ has done in his career. His career has a sub 4 ERA, 3.98, 21.4 wins above replacement, and actually has had a sub 4 ERA 5 out of the last 6 years. Even though his peripherals don't especially support that every year, the problem that he had was a miserable 2019 that ended up, I think, hurting his reputation a little bit. But he's a fine pitcher to bring in on a 1 year deal, a 38-year-old veteran to anchor that rotation. So I would definitely be happy with this if I was the Twins. You bring in a veteran guy; he's not going to be counted on to be your ace. You got Kenta Maeda there,
and
um,
Jose
and
Barrios.
and Jose Barrios. I mean, uh, got a couple other guys that are just fine as pitchers. So maybe he replaces like Jake Odorizzi type role.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
number three, number four type guy. So I think this is a fine move for the Twins.
Yeah, like you said, I was gonna say absolutely. He's gonna fill in basically what Jake Odorizzi was, but from the left side instead of the right side. You look at 2015, 361 ERA, 2016, 318, 2017, 353, 2018, 365. You talked about his 2019 where he had a blow up of 491, but 2020 rebounded to a 347, and all that's in the AL East where he was facing the Red Sox, he was facing the Yankees, the Rays, the Blue Jays, Orioles. All of those are really hitter friendly ballparks, really. And now you're going to go to the AL Central where you're going to be facing the Indians and the White or not the White Sox, the Tigers
Well, he
and the
will be facing the
Royals.
White Sox, but
Well,
that might be tough.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say the White Sox are a lot better than that. What I was thinking, but you're gonna be facing the Royals, you're gonna be facing the Tigers, you're gonna be facing the Indians. Like you're gonna be facing these teams who are either in the middle of a rebuild or kind of starting one off. In the Indians' case, so I, I think it's gonna be a really solid signing, somebody that's gonna be able to help them stabilize as well. And get them a lefty because their top three guys have been righties for quite a while, so they've kind of struggled to find a left-hander. They signed like Rich Hill last year, but he, was injury prone and didn't get to pitch much. So Jay Happ, I think it's going to be a very, very good signing for the Twins and underrated probably for 8 million. When we look back next year, we might say that. Um, but we'll go on ahead and move on to our next deal. It's another smaller deal for another catcher, but that's Jason Castro signs with the Astros for 2 years, 7 million. Kind of going back to the team that he spent most of his career with. He was with them from 2010 through 2016. He ended up leaving them right before they went to the World Series, which we were kind of talking about beforehand. He'd been there for all those bad years and then left right as they go to the World Series. But he's, if you look at his slash line, it's not that great. It's kind of close to what Andrew Rome or Austin Romine's was 230 batting average, 312 on base, 390 slugging. But he's a very good defensive catcher. He's very good at framing, very good at throwing runners out, and just very good at calling a game and keeping pitchers, in line.
Yeah, I think you hit it on Castro there. He's a solid catcher. Is a good defender. He spent some time in other places. A year in Minnesota, a year in Los Angeles with the Angels. So, but when it comes to his career in Houston, he had a couple years where he did hit pretty well. He wasn't. He's never been a an elite type hitter or anything, but he's not a terrible hitter. Especially against right-handed pitching. He's a guy who's, I think, for his career has always had some pretty big platoon splits. But, he's been an inconsistent hitter. But not it's not to say he can't do it anymore. And then, you know, you look at the guy you want to bring in another catcher. The Astros have had a little bit of a revolving door there the last few years. Ever since McCann left in free agency, went back to Atlanta, and eventually retired. They haven't really had a catcher that stuck for a long period of time. So, but I think it's a solid move there with Castro. And while we're on the topic, guy I think is an even more solid move. Is Michael Brantley, who re-signed with the Astros after a bizarre, time where they reported that he was going to Toronto, and then the report said, "Oh wait, he's not," and then they were like, "He is," and then he's not. Well, he signed with the Astros again on a 2-year, $32 million deal. He's 33 years old, four-time All-Star. He's actually been to the All. He has actually went to the All-Star game 3 straight years, 17, 18, 19. Of course, this year we didn't have an All-Star game, so it could have been 4 straight with the way he played this year. Um, and he's a career 297 hitter, 354 on base, 440 slugging, 117 WRC plus, 25 and a third wins above replacement in his career. Pretty solid numbers there. And he's actually put up 9.1 wins above replacement, combining the last 3 seasons with a 125 WRC plus and or higher in the last 3 seasons. And that 9.1 that includes the shortened season this year where he was killing it. So that number would have been higher if we had a full season this year.
Yeah, when me and Matt were talking before the show, and we talked about how in those years where he was with the Indians, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, he was very, very good. He was looking like one of the young up and coming hitters, the better hitters in the game. And then 2015, he was really, really good as well, but then he got injured, and that just continued on for the next 2 seasons in 2016, 2017, and it kind of seemed like we had said people kind of forgot about Michael Brantley or what he could be because of those injuries. And then he comes back 2018, has another very good year, signs with the Astros, and then has 2 very good seasons as well. All-star level seasons, like you said. So this is a very, very underrated deal. Brantley, he's not gonna hit you a ton of home runs. I mean, 22 was his highest number. He's got that a little bit more as his careers come, later on. That could be because of the juiced baseball or launch angle or whatever. But he's one of the best hitters at making contact. And he just puts the ball or the bat on the ball consistently. He does not strike out that much at all.
Yeah, he reminds me of if Nick Markakis was at his best for a long period of time. That's what Michael Brantley reminds me of. He's a good doubles hitter, hits gap to gap. Um, he's just a really good overall player. Puts the ball in play, gives you a good at bat every time. Low strikeout rate. He walks pretty good bit. Good on base. I think he's a very good player. Um, and then for the Astros, I mean, those two moves that I think the Astros, I don't know if too many people expect them to be a contender this year, especially losing Springer. Obviously, they don't have Verlander again from his Tommy John surgery. So, I don't know how many people are expecting them to do really well this year, but these moves with the pieces with the state of the AL West maybe keep you in it, especially with the Brantley move. That they couldn't afford to lose him. So, some interesting stuff there. But let's move on. We got a couple big moves in the NL East as well. We'll start off with the Nationals, who made a couple moves this week. The first one is not a very big move, as it's a very small contract. It's a veteran player, but it's a guy who's been around a long time. Ryan Zimmerman, and this guy he signed a 1 year, $1 million deal. This guy's a really good player and has been for a long time. He's 36 years old. He's a two-time All-Star, two-time Silver Slugger. Um, he's got a career 38.2 wins above replacement, a 279 average, 343 on base, 475 slugging. All solid numbers there. He's been a well above average hitter for his career. He didn't play this past year, opted out because of COVID before the season. And his last couple years hasn't been great. He's definitely aged. He played first base now. He's famous for playing third base there for a long time, but he's a guy who you look at his career in Washington, 15 seasons. He's been there since the beginning. 2005 was his first year. He broke into the big leagues, and I mean, he has been with Washington. I believe that was actually Washington's first year after moving from Montreal. So I think he's been there every single year since they've been in Washington. He
He,
is the national,
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say he was the Nationals' first ever draft pick.
Yeah.
Was Ryan Zimmerman. So he's been in the organization for 17 seasons, pretty much.
Yeah, so just a really good player. At this stage in his career, he's probably a bench bat, but it's worth mentioning, him coming back. He opted out this past year. I'm sure, you know, if people, I'm sure he probably contemplated retirement. He came off that World Series, but he's gonna give it another ride here this year. For them. And then the other move the Nationals made, a bigger move when it comes to probably if the effect on that team this year is Brad Hand. He signed a 1 year, $10.5 million deal. That point five was very interesting for some reasons that we'll get into in a minute. But um, Brad Hand is a player, three-time All-Star. He's only 30 years old. I thought he was older than that. He has a career 365 ERA, 369 FIP, which sounds pretty average for a reliever, but he did start his career as a starter for a pretty long period of time before moving to the bullpen where he has excelled. 2020 was very good, and he's been good for the last 4 years out of the bullpen, 4 or 5 years. 2020 he had a 205 ERA, a 137 FIP, but a 383 xFIP. And I went and looked into those numbers a little bit more because I thought that was pretty crazy discrepancies there. And he got really lucky on fly balls this year. He probably should have given up a lot of home runs with the amount of fly balls he was getting, and maybe part of that playing in Cleveland, and I'm not exactly sure what the deal was there, but he definitely was a guy who was giving up a lot of fly balls, and that's after being a great ground ball pitcher. His rate has dropped from 45 to 25 in the last 2 seasons ago. So the last couple of years he's been a pretty low. He hasn't gotten many grounders. So we'll see how that plays in Washington. And but the guy strikes out a lot and he doesn't walk many. So that's obviously things that you like to see if you're the Washington Nationals. So
Yeah. If you're a Nationals fan, you obviously have to be excited about Ryan Zimmerman coming back. Fan favorite. Like you said, he is Mr. National. And he's decent. I mean, he's been okay the last couple years. It's just more about who the player is to your team. But Brad Hand, like you were talking about, that's going to be a fantastic signing. For the Nationals, they could use another back into the bullpen type guy. You mentioned, when he started as a starter, well, that was with the Marlins, and they just kept using him as a starter. Once he finally got traded to the Padres, he moved to the bullpen full time, and that's when his career's really taken off. Since 2016, he had 292, 216, 275. His worst year is a 330 ERA, and his worst FIP in those years is a 320. So it's a guy who, is very, like you said, his ground ball rate has really dropped and his fly ball rate has really risen, but he's proven to be one of the better relief pitchers, especially for a left-hander. Left-handed relievers are hard to come by, and a guy like Brad Hand is, he's going to be a very valuable piece to that back end of that bullpen. He strikes out quite a bit of people. I mean, if you're looking at his K per nine for his career, it's 923, but ever since he's went to the bullpen, he hasn't had one under 11 strikeouts per nine. And, he loses command and walks people at sometimes. Um, but I mean, it's not terrible. It's okay. And like you were mentioning, the point 0.5 is because what was really interesting is when the Indians put him on waivers this year, they put him on waivers for 1 year, $10 million is what his contract was, and no team, that was at the beginning of the offseason, and no team claimed him. So any team could have had him this offseason for $10 million on one season, and he ends up signing with the Nationals for 10.5 million. So he literally just signed for half a million more dollars, and any team could have had him for 10 million, pretty much. They just didn't want to take that chance.
Yeah, well, one thing that's interesting about that too is, and it's probably an encouraging sign, is that I think teams at the very beginning of the offseason were extremely worried about what the revenue situation was going to look like. And I think if I don't want to read too deep into that, but I think teams are maybe relaxing a little bit on it. They thinking that we might start to see fans getting back into the stadiums mid-season, and in full crowds mid-season maybe, and have a full season of baseball this year. I think there might have been some worry about that. Obviously when the off season started, the vaccines hadn't come out yet to try to limit the pandemic, and obviously that's still going to be important for the beginning of the season. But there's it's starting to look like a chance that we start to see revenues getting closer to normal, between midway and the second half of the season here this year. So um, some of the projections are kind of showing that we might be able to start to turn things around here by mid-season. So that might be an interesting note to look at. Maybe teams are thinking that that's something that's more attainable now. Um, but that was not the. These were neither one of these were the biggest signing in the National League East this
Week.
week. Yeah, sorry. The biggest one was definitely the one that the Phillies made. It is a re-signing, which just tipped my hand as to who it is, but it's JT Realmuto, who is, like I talked about with Springer when I was talking about Springer. He was right up there for the biggest position player of this off season. 5-year, $115.5 million deal. He broke the AAV record for a catcher that was held by Joe Mauer, and he's a great player. You look at his numbers and career 19 wins above replacement. 2017, 2018, 2019 were all very good for him. Over 4 wins above replacement all 3 of those seasons. 2019 he put up 6 wins above replacement almost. He's a solid hitter. He's above average hitter. He's not an elite hitter, but he's very good. And he's also a very good defender. He can run a little bit for a catcher. He's athletic. Got a good arm. Throws people out. Good game caller. He's exactly what you want in a catcher, in my opinion. So I like JT Realmuto, and I think the Phillies were very smart to bring him back.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, he like you said, he's not going to be one of your elite hitters, but still, I mean, at the catching position, I mean,
Yeah,
3 years before this year, he was 278, 277, 275, a 332 on base, 340, and a 328. I mean, that's consistency. That is consistently elite for the position that he plays. And then
absolutely.
this year, he was even, his batting average dropped to 266, but his on base went up to basically 350. So he was getting on base more. He just wasn't getting, the hits that to boost that average up. But still, that was only 47 games. So you're talking about over the course of a full season, he's going to play another 100 games on top of that. So you just add all that, and those numbers are going to average themselves back out most likely with a guy like JT Realmuto. He's just consistent at what he does, and like you said, he for the defense that he plays and the athleticism he has at catcher, this deal, I mean, this deal is well earned. He's going to be, and his skill set, I should say this, his skill set isn't something that's really going to change much as he progresses in his career. He might not run as much, but he doesn't run much now, so maybe that just goes to a halt. But he hits for a decent amount of power. He hits for a decent amount of contact. He doesn't, he isn't, he strikes out almost 20% of the time. So that that might be something where as he gets later on to his career, he knocks that down by trying not to hit the ball in the air as much. But for the position at catcher, I know I'm saying that a lot, but when you look at the catching situation around Major League Baseball, you have to have a different view of than any other position really because of the toll that takes on your body. That is a very hard position to put these numbers up with consistently year in and year out.
Yeah, and you talk about that as well, signing a long-term deal for a catcher who is, I believe he's 20, he's about to be 30, so
Mhm.
this will take him through his age 35 season. um talk about with the National League, that the DH becoming a factor, and whether or not they add the DH to the National League long term, which because eventually you talk about with that taking a wear and tear on your body. You'll want to have a guy who with his bat he could be a DH. I mean, he's not like I say, he's not an elite hitter, but he's still a very good hitter. Obviously, as a catcher, he's an incredible hitter. But you could get to a point to where you might be able to DH him a little bit to save his body some once you get a year or two from now. But for right now, this is fantastic for the Phillies. They had to bring him back after what they traded. After what they traded for him, because you talk about Sixto Sanchez is starting to look like one of the future premier pitchers in baseball, and Jorge Alfaro is a pretty solid catcher in his own right. So you definitely don't want to trade those guys and then lose Realmuto without even going to the playoffs once. So interesting moves. I like the move there for the Phillies. Obviously, anytime you can bring back a great player like him, you're in a good position. Moving on, we did have a couple of trades this week. Not the biggest trades of the offseason, but the first one here was a pretty big trade. The New York Yankees have made another move. They acquired Jameson Taillon from the Pittsburgh Pirates in exchange for four prospects. Um, they Their names are Miguel Yajuri. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. Roanzi Contreras, Michael Escato, and Cannon Smith.
Yeah, Tyone is he's a guy who's dealt with injuries. He was a former, I believe he was picked number 2 overall. Yeah, picked number 2 overall in 2010. He was about to break into the major leagues in 2015 when he ended up having to have surgery. I forgot what that one was for. But anyway, he then in 2016 I think the 2015 was a hernia actually. 2016 he comes in and then he gets injured again. Um, and he's only really had one full season in the majors, and that was in 2018, and he was really, really good that year. 3.20 ERA, a 3.46 FIP, almost 4 wins above replacement. He's a guy who's never been able to stay healthy, though. He's always battled something. He ended up battling testicular cancer at one point. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries. He had a hernia at one point. He didn't pitch at all this season because of the Tommy Johns. He had that in August of 2019. So it's a move that if he's healthy, he can be a really good, solid major league pitcher. Most likely a 3 in that rotation, maybe a 4, depending on how Luis Severino comes back. But it's all going to be about a key to health for him. The good thing is he's only signed to a $2.5 million contract this year. He has arbitration again next year, so he's not a free agent until 2023.
Yeah, if Tayon is healthy and back to his form of 2018, which I don't think his form's ever really fallen off, but anytime you see a guy with Tommy John surgery, that is going to be a concern. But you know, uh, he will be this would be a very good trade. It is a little bit of a risky trade because of just he's coming off a lot of injuries, and the Yankees didn't give up just nothing for him either. They gave up four guys who are going to slot into the Pirates' top 30. Um, None of them are elite prospects, but all of them are guys that are at least have a legit shot at the major leagues. Yahuri, I'm not exactly sure how to say that name, but him and Roazni Contreras. are both pretty good pitching prospects. Both are real similar. They both have a above average pitches, 3 or 4 across the board, and good command. Yeah, Jury actually had a sub 2% walk rate over his last, or sub 2 walks per 9, sorry, over his last 2 levels in 2019, which was high A and double A. He actually made his major league debut this year. He pitched just 7 innings for the Pirates, but or for the Yankees, excuse me. But he'll slot in as the number 11 prospect for the Pirates. Contreras, like I say, very similar to Yujiri, maybe not quite as good on the command side, but still solid. He's going to slot in as their number 15 prospect. Escato, he's the number 20 prospect, so he's going to slot in for the Pirates. Um, He's a second baseman, has good raw power, throws well. He's got some hit tool questions, and Cannon Smith is a guy who has above average to plus raw power, pretty good, power across the board. But he's this kind of similar. He's got a hit tool question. He's got a lot of swing and miss, and he's not a great runner and thrower either. So but you would hope he could potentially develop into a pretty solid bat for the Pirates at some point. He will slot in as their number 22 prospect. So interesting stuff there in that trade. But we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I really don't think we're gonna find out too much on the Pirate side for a couple years. But hey, maybe one of these guys. It seems like there's some pretty high ceiling guys in there. So we'll see what happens there. Um, One more trade, just to briefly mention. Not a huge one, but the it was pretty big in the minds of some people in Boston and New York, as Yankees made another deal, but they made it with the Red Sox, which was the first one I think they'd made since when did you say it was?
2014 was the last time.
2014. Okay, so they had been pretty recent, but they've only made a few since the
I
early
think that was.
1900s.
I was gonna say. I think that's the first. 2014 was the first trade since like 1988 between the two or something. So it's only the second trade since then.
Yeah, so pretty crazy, but the Yankees are sending Adam Ottavino to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for prospect Frank Herman. Ottavino obviously had a really good 2018 in Colorado. 2019 he was solid in New York. Free agent at the end of this season. He's owed $8 million. And Herman is going to be the number 25 prospect for the Yankees. He's got a good fastball. He doesn't have command, so probably a reliever there. Potential to slot in nicely in a bullpen. So
Yeah, Ottavino, he's had a couple years where he's really struggled, but he's been a solid reliever. I mean, in 2016 he had a 2.63 ERA, 3 on the dot FIP. That was in Colorado, so that's a very fantastic season for pitching in Colorado. 2017 he bounced back to, or not bounced back. He went back to what most pitchers look like in Colorado with the 5.06 ERA, 2.43 the next year. His first year in the pinstripes, he had 1.90 ERA, a 3.44 FIP, which is, his that FIP was a little higher than what his career number was going into that year. Um, and then this year he really struggled. I mean, it was only an 18 innings, so it's a small sample size for a reliever, really, but he had a 5.89 ERA, a 3.52 FIP. Um, you know, there's not much he's going to do for the Red Sox. I mean, they just kind of are looking for arms to fill in right now. I don't think that they're going to be a serious contender unless they make some pretty big moves, like maybe acquiring a guy like Mookie Betts, maybe. Um, sorry, I just had to throw that in there. But oh, and one more thing we forgot to mention, just because we're talking about the Red Sox. The Red Sox signed Kike Hernandez this week. Totally forgot
oh
about
yeah,
that. As
yes,
a Dodger fan, that one hurts a lot. So I don't. That's very easy for
yeah.
me to forget. Um, so he's gonna be a utility bat for them, but or play second base most likely. But just throw that in there. But um, you know, it was more of a depth trade that the Yankees needed to clear spots so they could formally announce the signings of Corey Kluber and DJ LeMahieu. So they had to get somebody off the roster, and Ottavino for $9 million kind of just made sense to kind of kick off, and that also helps their luxury tax number.
Yeah, that definitely is going to help the Yankees with some of their money stuff and everything. But I mean, Ottavino's a guy who, if Boston's not in it, they can flip him at the deadline, and I don't believe that they will be in it, but we'll see. So, um, but yeah, that's pretty much out of all the list of free agent and trade moves this week. That's pretty much all of them. So, we've got a few more minutes here before we run out too much over time, and I kind of wanted to discuss just briefly what you think about where everyone stands and where you think who do you think needs to make some more moves here before the season starts. We've got a few free agents left out there. Trevor Bauer still out there. Um, you've got Justin Turner still out there. There were some rumors about him today. Jock Peterson's still out there. There's the potential for a couple more a couple more guys to be traded. Maybe a Jose Ramirez could be moved. Chris Bryant's still out there. Wilson Contreras is still out there. There's been talk about both of those guys being traded. So what do you think? Maybe now that we're getting closer, honestly, if spring training starts on time, which we're a little unsure of right now, it'll only be a few weeks. So what are we thinking here?
Um, you know, one team in the NL Central needs to make a move. Right now we still say that the Cubs are probably the team to beat. Um, one of those teams need to make their move for it. Are the Cubs really going to go for it this year? Um, are the Cardinals going to bring back Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright and maybe another move to, fill in that second base hole since they let Colton Wong go? Milwaukee. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I don't think Milwaukee's a serious threat right now. Um, maybe if they sign uh, a couple hitters, I mean, they have multiple holes in that lineup that they need to address at first base, um, third base, even maybe possibly shortstop and outfielder. And then they really need to address pitching as well. So, I mean, if they want to do something, as far as the American League is concerned, the Angels for sure they need to find more pitching. They have a very good lineup. They're very good defensively, but their starting rotation and their bullpen needs a lot of help. So maybe do they go make a move for Trevor Bauer or something? And maybe the Blue Jays. We've talked about them getting Semien, Springer, and Yates, and that's good for them. But they could still use a starting pitcher. They could still use, maybe it's not they don't play on Trevor Bauer now, but maybe if you play in James Paxton or Jake Odorizzi level guy, and then maybe if you can get another bullpen arm. They lost Anthony Bass, Ken Giles. They're really high on Delise, and you have Yates now, but you can use another guy in that bullpen that can really. Eat some not eat innings, but that can be a solid reliever for you.
Yeah, I think those are some good names. I think you could add maybe the Braves to it. They made a couple pretty good moves at the beginning of the offseason, but they've really been quiet since then. While the other teams in the division have added a lot. The Mets have added Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco. That was huge, and they're still in on other free agents as well. The Phillies haven't added too much. They added Archie Bradley, but they're bringing back Realmuto, and they're going to be pretty big players this coming up season. The Nationals have added, Schwarber, Zimmerman back. They added Hand. They've added some guy Lester. They've added some guys. The Braves added Charlie Morton at the beginning of the offseason, and they added a guy like they added Drew Smiley, who was really good last year. But I think the hope would be for many Braves fans. They were one game away from the World Series last year, and you would think that they might add a bat to help improve their lineup because they lost Marcelo Ozuna, and it might be Ozuna coming back, but right now that seems fairly unlikely. So are they going to add a guy via trade? There's been some small rumblings about maybe Jose Ramirez out there for the Braves as a potential trade target, which would be a game changer, really. But other than that, I think the Angels, like you said, you've got a really good core of players. You got Trevor. I mean, you got Mike Trout. You've got Anthony Rendon, and they still got some pretty good players to go along with him in the lineup. I know Justin Upton struggled last year, but he's always been a pretty good player. You see, you've got another guy in, David Fletcher, who's had a couple of pretty good seasons. I mean, there's some stuff there. They added Jose Quintana this week, obviously, but I would like to see them add another big time pitcher. I don't know what Otani's going to do if he's going to end up pitching on the mound at any point in the future, but I think you would like to see them maybe be the team in there for Trevor Bauer. Um, that would be very interesting. And um, I think, and like you said, the NL Central, somebody needs to make a move. I'm higher on the Brewers than you are. I think you could see, if you could see a Christian Yelich bounce back, you could see Keston Hira, really pick it up this year. Improve on his. He's got a lot of talent. He had a down year in his second season after being really good as a rookie. You could see maybe Lorenzo Cain playing well this year, and they've got two great starting pitchers, plus a bullpen that still includes Josh Hader and some other really nice guy, Devin Williams, some other really good players. So I think you still got a team there that if you add some depth pieces could be solid. Although I don't consider, as we were talking about it earlier. I don't consider them World Series contenders. I do consider them maybe as they're a very likely playoff team. I mean, I probably wouldn't pick them at the moment in the NL Central, but the Cubs are still talking about trading Bryant and Contreras and everybody, and the Cardinals don't seem to really be making too many moves, and the Pirates are bad. So, the Reds have cast away a lot of their key pieces from last year. So, I could definitely see that being a place that, maybe the Brewers add a couple pieces late in this offseason. That was one of the places rumored that might be in on Justin Turner. Maybe they give Justin Turner that 3 or 4 year deal that the Dodgers are kind of not sure about. So we'll see what's going to happen. It's going to be a very interesting, last few weeks of the off season, and spring training is not too far off. I don't think anybody's really paying too much attention to it, but if it starts on time, middle of February, we're at the end of January, so next episode we do will be in February.
Right? The off season is it's dwindling down to an end,
Yeah.
and we're finally starting to see that by the amount of moves that are happening. So hopefully this keeps up because it makes shows really easy to talk about and not have to fill too much space with, you know. So it feels good that we're getting close to having baseball back potentially, if unless Arizona has something to say about it because they don't seem to be too happy about things right now. But anyways, I don't have anything else. Do you got anything else?
I don't think so. I would have liked to have talked more about Hank Aaron this week, and we'll get into that in the future. And I think at some point in the next month or two, some of these moves will slow down a little bit once spring training starts. There won't be quite as much to talk about. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame ballot and what happened there with nobody getting in and who we might have put on that ballot. But I thought that was very interesting to say the least that nobody got put in the Hall of Fame this year. So, but that's a different story for a different day, and we'll talk about it at some point, I'm sure. But I'm excited. It won't be too much longer until we can, we still got some big free agents out there that can change things up, but it won't be too much longer till it, turns into prediction season, and I think we both like that. So,
Yeah, and if one of these weeks where we also have a slow week, we'll go back over our 15 predictions that we picked, when the off season started and hit back to those. So that'll be interesting as well. And definitely you can go on with about the Hall of Fame for an entire episode about what our ballots would be and what's wrong with that system. But we'll leave that to another time. And I think this has been a pretty jam-packed episode. So it's been a fun one. But we'll catch you guys next week.
yeah, thanks for tuning in.